Yes, good?
Yep.
Hi, folks. Welcome to a very special because of the day. It is September 11th, 2021. It's been 20 years, and everybody remembers where they were. So tonight, you see the flags draped behind me. Tonight, our draws are only for first responders. So we thought what we would do is try to honor them. So if you are a first responder, enter our draw. We're going to give away lots of Dead Cat sweaters, lots of Purple Heart t-shirts, and on every $1,000 increment of donations we receive, we're going to give away one of my dovetail saws. But tonight is reserved for first responders only. So that's ambulance. What is that? Actually, does that paramedics, firefighters, police? Does it go farther than that? I guess that would be first. Hospitals would be second, wouldn't they? So I'll keep reminding you throughout the night. I mean, we don't need to see proof, but it's on your honor. What else do I need to mention tonight? We have our special guest tonight is going to be Moose, and who has quite a connection to the U.S. community. So about midpoint, he's going to do a special tribute to 9/11, and he wrote a poem, so you'll enjoy that when time comes. Let me know when your first question comes up. For our topic tonight, as you know, is routers and router planes and hand routers. Anything to do with that, we'll field questions. We're going to talk about router table, all stuff I'm going to do 2 commercials tonight, like it or not. I'm going to do them because I've got stuff that you're going to that will make a difference in your woodwork. Trust me. As soon as Rex brings them over. And if any questions creep in about this end-grain gluing, we'll entertain those as well. I did a few little things just to kind of satisfy some of the curiosity on that, and we'll address it as the night goes through. Anything else, Frick? I got lots of other stuff we're going to do, but I'm going to wait till the audience builds up a little bit. By the way, I should announce, we just since, well, you know what happened because our last broadcast was right in the middle of our PHP, which was our first post-COVID, and it was an all-Canadian PHP. We've got another one scheduled for the 7th, Jake?
11th.
The 11th of October?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yes, 11th.
I must be looking at a different month.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to get back to your system.
Yes, I do. So on the 11th of October, we are having the class is full. I've been able to notify 5 of the 7 combat wounded vets, but I want a big shout out to Kyle Perrell. Kyle Perrell's in Newfoundland. He was Newfoundland Regiment. I don't have his badge in front of me, but you'll see it at some point. And Kyle, what?
You've got his arm patch thing.
Yeah, I do. Well, actually, that's not his. Well, it is his.
Yes, it is.
And it was signed by, who
George.
signed it?
I thought it was George Laurent. No, it was
No. It was from Calgary. Short.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Theo.
No, Theo Fleury. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's who signed it. He gave me that. So anyway, Kyle was one of the first 2 Canadian vets that we had. He and Jesse. Jesse was our assistant last week. Kyle's going to be on this week. I just talked to him, and it's all good to go, so it will be awesome. It'll be great to see him again, too. He's a super guy. And I'm going to give a shout-out to the last class and the next class once we get rolling. Big hello to Angie. If you don't know who Angie is, there she is working away. Angie is Ken's cousin, and she packages all of our Purple Heart t-shirts, she and her sister Lynn. And we have a special locker here waiting for her, so as soon as she's better, she's coming out here to work. Hello, Ange. Sorry, I forgot to say hi to you last 2 weeks ago. All right, questions yet, Frick?
Yeah.
Good, let's have them.
First question comes from our friend Bobbert.
Bobbert.
Okay, and
Bobbert, you owe me a phone call, by the way.
his question is, when cutting multiple pieces from a template, are guide bushings better than bits with bearings?
When cutting multiple pieces with a template, are guide bushings better than bearings?
Bits with bearings.
So, just in case you don't know what he means, This is a your answer. You're going to get that question answered just by seeing what I have. So this is a bit with a bearing. Ball bearing runs on the bottom side, and that will read the flat part of the wood so that you can cut the profile that you want. What I really like about these is that they're easy to replace when they go bad or if they get gunked up. You can just get a new bearing. A guide bushing is, I think I have one somewhere, but I rarely ever use it because I didn't have a lot of faith in them. So into your base plate would fit a round collar, and it would have a bushing that the bit would come up through, and you would rub on that bushing. And if I had my choice, I would probably take the bearing over the guide bushing. But, the part of your question was multiples. Because so I'll take this back to my real life experience. When we started making handles, I started making handles for my saws, I started off with bearings. And multiple cuts on tough material, the bearings wore out. And there's a fair bit of slop in the bearing. The way the bearing inside collar actually sits on the shaft is not a very, very precise fit. And that gave for a little bit of vibration. So I actually end up, in that circumstance, I switched to a rub collar. But I wore the rub collars right out. In fact, I remember thinking there must be something wrong with this. I took it apart, and it's a brass rub collar that the bit came up through, and the brass was probably half as thick on the wear side than it was everywhere else. So, but Bob, I would say if you're going to do a whole lot of them, I would probably say a rub collar would be better than a bearing under that circumstance, especially if it's a real hard, heavy load, meaning you're taking a lot of material in a tough material. That would be what I tell you. Next, Frick. And Bob, I want to talk to you about your website, so that's why I'd say you need to call me. By the way, you need to check out Bob's website, which is, what's it called, Jake? I want to post that. Yeah, find Bob, find the name of Bob's website, and we'll send a bunch of people there. And Bob makes some really nice cutting boards and charcuterie boards. And I was quite impressed with a couple of them in particular. So, and Bob's all about giving back to the veteran community, and that's what most of his business is. So let's see if we can't get him some business tonight.
The vintage veteran.
The vintage veteran, that's it. Because Bob's really old. TheVintageVeteran.com. The Vintage, VINTAGE Veteran, VETREN. VintageVeteran.com. Go to Bob's site. It should be up and running with the, anyway, contact him. Get one of his shooting boards. Make a wonderful gift. Okay, Frick, next.
All right, next one comes from Scott in Spring Grove, Illinois.
Hi, Scott.
He says, what do you think is the best router out there giving no consideration to age?
Good. That's what I got out. So how many of these do you have, Jake?
I think 5.
5 of this brand?
I think.
So, in my work with Alan Peters, and Alan was what you would call a hybrid woodworker. He did a lot by hand, but he also used power tools. And over there, they had a brand of router called ELU, E-L-U. And he just used to tell me how fantastic these were. Well, DeWalt bought them. And in buying them, they kept some of the ELU designs, and they discontinued others, I think. But this is the one that they kept, and it's the DW something 21. 621?
I thought it was 635 or 670.
No, I think it's 6. I'm almost positive it's 621. So let's see who has the best memory. Thank you very much. DW 621. Age
Okay.
before beauty.
Now pronounce Chris Shahusky's last name.
Chris Shahusky. So here's what I like about it. It's 2 horsepower. I have, if I were to sit here right now and add them up, Ken, how many routers do we have in this shop? Close to 20? Possibly more.
All more.
Okay, so we use a lot of routers. We have the big 3 horsepower Porter cables. We've got at least 4 or 5 or 6 of those. And we've got 4 of these little Colts. We have 4 or 5 of these. I have the old standard Hitachi, the green one.
2 in the
had some Freud ones that, and I had some of the Triton ones. This, I've never felt that the 2 horsepower couldn't do what I needed out of a 3 horsepower. So I really like this, but I've got some criticisms too, so stay close. The first thing you want on a router is you want dust collection that'll actually do something, because they make an absolute mess and they just blow everything everywhere. So what this one has, where's the, is it over on this one? This has a little adapter, little plastic adapter. Now that's not a very big hole, but you're talking about a router. And that fits in the top, swivels, and it'll take most small vacuum cleaner hoses. It'll stick right into there. And then that shroud comes down around there, and it does a really good job. Now, what I don't like is you got so much open area in here. I would prefer to have that closed down a little bit more, but you can't get everything. I really like that. I like the fact that it's a plunge router, but you got to understand that the disadvantage to a plunge router is it only locks on one side. So when you make, oh, I can't do that, I got to push it. When you make your lock, it's locking on this one, not on that one. So this one, because this side is really big, it seems to lock a whole lot better, but on most of them, the rods are the same size. You only lock on one, and you go over in this one, and this one will actually move. So that has a disadvantage, especially in a router table. It just doesn't hold it as firmly as I would like. So for that type of thing, I'd like a fixed base. A fixed base is the type that the collar actually tightens up and it holds the whole thing very firmly. But I still wouldn't trade this one because of that feature. As I mentioned, the fact that this is a big pipe here versus this small one, that seems to really get a good grip on it, and it doesn't move nearly as much as the others. I really like this release mechanism, which you turn, so it's all in the same hand. You don't have to do anything different. You turn up or down and then lock it. That works really nice, and there's a little bit rubbery, so you get a really good grip on them. I really like this adjustment. So if you're trying to get a perfect setting, you can you loosen that, bring this down, lock it, and then you still have the ability to move that pin. So if I'm using it in a router table and I need just a little bit more exposure, what I'll do is let it drop down, wind this back just a little bit, bring it back down, and that gives you that little incremental increase or decrease, whichever it happens to be. So this is a really nice feature right here. And you can have 3 different settings. I rarely ever use that, but if you wanted to repeat multiple cuts, you could. The fact that it's variable speed, I think that's a huge plus. So it's all about rim speed. When you're spinning a large diameter bit, you really want to slow it down because that outer rim is really moving fast. If you're turning a very small 1/4 inch diameter straight bit like this, if I was cutting, where's my little 1/8 inch, 16th inch, right here. If I'm cutting a little 16th inch slot cutter, then I want that turning maximum RPM, because if you think about rim speed, it's not moving very fast out here. So you want that to be really fast. When you're cutting something, when you're using something like this, you want that to be slowed down, almost on the slowest setting. So paying attention to that, and that's a feature built into a lot of routers today, but a nice one on here. And I like the way this one works. So while it's running, you can just turn the dial and it'll speed up or slow down accordingly. I got one thing I don't like about it, and I'm going to come to that in a second, but I'll give you all the pluses first. I like the fact that they give you a cord that's got some decent length. Most of them, it's so short, and you're having to use even what should be a normal length from the plug, you have to use an extension cord. This one I like. I like how positive that spindle lock is. It makes it quite easy to change. Did I just break that?
Yeah.
No. It goes on and come off. I had to put that bit down in from the top. So you put that down. It's a real positive lock. You get your wrench on there, tighten it up, loosen it off, real easy. Now, I think that's about all I'm going to tell you about this, except for the fact that this switch. It is the most awkward thing. So you got to push this down, pull that in, and then push that forward again. And you get in there, and it won't seem to stay put. And I can now get it about 8 times out of every 10. So you're pushing forward, pulling in, and then pushing forward. And you would think that would be easy to remember, but not for someone my age. What a terrible thing to say. So that would be the router, the DeWalt 621. That is my preference right there. It's a 2 horsepower. It actually draws 10 amps. So it's not really 2 horsepower, but that's what they list it as. I suppose that's what they say builds up to. And it varies from 8,000 to 24,000 RPM. So you've got quite an adjustment. And while we're talking about them, for a small router, there's times when I want something just one-handed, easy to use, and I love this little Bosch Colt. I bought 4 of these at a sale one time. They were used, but hardly at all. So
I think the cord's longer than the DeWalt.
Yes, it is. That's another big bonus on this. Look how long the cord is on that little router, which is fantastic. I've never had to use an extension cord with this. What do I like about this? It's a fixed base, so that means when you clamp that, it stays put. There's no movement. What I don't like is this up and down gizmo here. It's very, very difficult to use. So if you turn it one way, it engages that, and you turn it the other way, it disengages it, and it's extremely hard to turn. So I usually just put it on the disengaged side, and I just move it, bang it one way or the other. Spindle lock. Spindle lock's not bad. It's a little bit awkward. You can use 2 wrenches on there. You can get a wrench on the actual shaft, and then lock and unlock that. But I prefer to use a spindle lock if I can. Variable speed, yep, at the top. So that's nice as well. The on-off switch is protected, so you don't accidentally bump it when you shouldn't. I like the way you hold on to it. This fit really ergonomically. It's great. Fits into your hand well. I prefer the square base plate as opposed to a round one. And there's a plastic piece that goes on there. I have no idea where it is. There's no dust collection or something like this, but that small, you wouldn't expect it anyway. Now, one more thing I wanted to say about this. What was it? Shoot, I just thought about it, and I thought I got to mention that. What was I talking about here that triggered that? Well, unfortunately, I can't remember. Maybe it'll come back to me. Anyway. Those are the 2 routers I use. If I use a router 10 times in a month, it would be one of these. And I probably use that one more than I use that one, but that's the one I have in my router table. So, good question. Next, please, Frick.
All right. Next one comes from Matt Knowles. He would like you to explain the difference between typical and climb cuts and how dangerous climb cuts can be.
Well, so you typically always go against the rotation. So it's probably best over here. In fact,
Just a second.
what's the matter?
Am I switching cameras, Jake?
No,
No?
you didn't catch it in time.
Why were you going to?
Okay, I'm going to switch him. Talk to the...
Okay, well, how come we're doing that?
Because Jake's went out. It'll come back to him.
It is.
Okay. It's back?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go over here to the router table. And I just made this not that long ago. But so I never make the mistake. I usually draw arrows on here so I know which way the router bit is spinning. And you would think you wouldn't have to do that, but as many years as I've been doing it, sometimes I'll still come in and get this pause in my brain and I don't know what side I should be on. So if it's spinning like that, then you typically always go against rotation. A climb cut would be to go in the opposite direction. So in the opposite direction, what's happening is that bit is trying to grab your board and fire it off like that. So with very few exceptions, and if I was doing an edge like that, what I would do is hold it very securely here, go in until that corner rests against the bearing, and then maintaining contact with the bearing, you go in and make your cut. When would you climb cut? Well, sometimes if I was going across the end of a board like that, like this, what you're going to do is you're going to get a lot of bad tear out on that backside. And if you were in a controlled setting, and this freehand is not a controlled setting, you could come in and do a little bit of a climb cut, and that sometimes doesn't tear it quite so bad. But for the most part, you always go against rotation. climb cut, whatever. If you ever have to do it, you got to make sure you've got it's well secured and it can't grab that out of your hand and chuck it. Next question, Frick.
All right. Next question comes from Ahmed.
Ahmed in California.
Yes.
Brother, how are you?
He says he currently has 34 routers. He's wondering if he should seek professional counseling.
There is no counseling that will work for you.
The next
Yes, send us 30 of them.
All right. The actual real question comes
You know, he
from-
only said that because we said, how many did we say we had?
Over 20.
Yeah, so he had to double it. I'm going to count mine now. Go ahead, Frick.
Question comes from Attila. That's the only name I have.
Attila, that name sounds familiar.
From Ottawa.
Yeah, customer.
What flush trim
Attila.
bit would you recommend for typically 3/4 inch Baltic birch ply? The super large white side spiral one?
Oh, well, I'll show you what I have. When it comes to a flush trim, the larger the diameter, typically the better it is. Now, I'll tell you why. When you're using a small diameter, like something like this, depending on how much material you're removing, as that's spinning, I need to actually demonstrate this, or not demonstrate, but okay, we'll use this. So if I was having to take 1/4 inch of material off of here with a small diameter cutter, there's my cutting radius. So you're actually cutting across the grain. So you know what it's like if I made a cut across here, these fibers are going to break out. So the smaller diameter, you're lifting these fibers and it ends up tearing a lot. Whereas if it was a large diameter, should be more round, you're not, that angle is not as severe. So I typically like to use a large diameter. But however, I bought this one, just JES88, whatever it's pronounced. What I liked about this bit was it came with about 15 different collars, so you could step it down and you could cut any rabbit you want. The problem is I find this vibrates, so there's something a little bit out of balance on that. It doesn't work nearly as well. If you want to buy a really expensive one and a really good one, this is made by Whiteside. And something about a compression cut, I don't know, but you've got the knives are on a spiral, carbide on a spiral, and they're going in opposite directions, but whatever that does, it makes for a beautiful cut. Now this bit is well over $100, so use it on stuff that really means something. And it's got a top bearing and a bottom bearing. You can remove the top one if you want, but that is probably the best flush trim bit I have found of all, and I've got lots of flush trim bits. We've got more bits than this over in the other shop, but this is just the ones that I have here. So larger diameter, stay away from the small diameters for most work. There's times when you have to have them, and these big ones I find vibrate too much, but that one, that's a really good one. Okay, next, Frick.
All right. Next one comes from Jim Sabados in Tucson, Arizona.
Hi, Jim.
When making multiple passes on a raised panel, do you prefer to raise the bit slightly for each pass or keep the bit at the same height and move the fence back for a bit each pass?
Well, I can't even tell you the last time I made a raised panel. So what Jim is talking about is, have I got an example here? Probably don't. I don't do it. On most kitchen doors, even some furniture doors, well, here's one over here, on Jake, where Jake keeps his camera. So you can see that panel inside that frame, and there's a profile on there. Well, that typically was done with a shaper, but I can best describe the average shaper as trying to stick a board into spinning helicopter blades. You get that thing that's that big in diameter with 3 big wings on it, and you turn it on, and it literally sounds like it's going to take off, and then you're sitting there thinking, I really want to put a piece of wood into there. So you don't see a whole lot of shapers being used anymore. I've got one if you want, for sale if you want one. 2. Yeah, don't use either one of them. So what they've done is they've made bits to do that same job that fit into a router. They're almost always a 1/2 inch shank. They have to be. You can't do that on a 1/4 inch. Too much stress. And the better ones, I think, are actually, instead of having big, wide cutters, they're tall. So instead of running your panel along in the bit like this. You run your panel like that, and your cutter is cutting the profile on the vertical axis instead of cutting it along the horizontal axis. Safer because you're not dealing with that cutter turning at tremendous RPM, and which is really, some of those puts tremendous stress on a small setup like a handheld router. Of course, you would never use that on a handheld. So his question is, you've got that bit sticking up out of your router table. Do you just keep, you're not going to take it in one pass anyway. You're going to do multiple passes, taking a little bit off each time. So do you bring your bit up all the way to the final height, and then use your fence, take a pass, move the fence, take another pass. So in other words, you're moving incrementally in like this until you get that completed profile. Or do you just keep raising it up? In other words, you take a small bit like here, and then like here, and then like here, until you finally get that. I suppose, I don't think it really matters, but just because on my router setup, and there are others that aren't, but mine's shop made, it's a heck of a lot easier for me to move the fence this way than it is to get underneath here and raise that bit up. So I would move my fence. But I really don't think there's much of a difference. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say there's no difference performance-wise whether you raise the bit or move the fence. Good question, though. Next, Rick.
All right.
I just want to remember. So we're having a draw tonight. We're going to give away our traditional 3 dead cat sweaters or golf shirts, your pick. We're going to give away a bunch of Purple Heart t-shirts. And on every $1,000 increment, we're going to give away one of my dovetail saws. But tonight is reserved just for first responders as a way of saying thank you for the sacrifices these people make, and as a way to remember those who gave their lives 20 years ago in that disaster that occurred on 9/11. We are, see you later. We are going to reserve all of our gifts.
Comments are very positive on that, by the way.
Pardon?
The comments are all positive on that.
Well, yeah, I get contacted by first responders all the time, and I'll share the message now. In fact, I was talking to an RCMP officer, a retired RCMP officer last night, and he asked me, what we do with the Purple Heart, where we bring combat wounded veterans in and we offer them a week-long, very intense, Ken, very intense?
Pretty intense. Yeah.
Pretty intense hand-tooled workshop. We send them home with about $4,000 worth of tools, and thanks to Jack Lane and Chris Chahusky and Jim up in Moncton, the Canadian version, we provide them with a bench. But this is a big lake, meaning there are lots of people that need this, and we're literally emptying this lake with a spoon. We don't make much of an impact in the big scheme. We do a big impact for the few we're able to help, but we're not doing much to drain this lake. If we tried to dilute what we're doing by taking care of all our first responders, then we that becomes the shotgun approach, and we're trying to do the sharpshooter approach, meaning we're trying to gain some expertise so that we can be as good as we possibly can in dealing with those who have suffered either a physical or mental wound in combat as a result of them protecting our liberty and freedom. So as much as I hate to say no to anybody, we reserve what we do for those. And I say it all the time, these guys, first responders, deal with tragedy. They're in every day of their career. So somebody needs to step up and do the same thing for them. I just wish some of the people that treat these illnesses would come and watch for a week and see what happens. I'm the first one to say I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a woodworker. I teach woodworking. That I can do. We just so happens that whatever it is we do seems to help the majority of these people. So somebody in government needs to wake up and realize that it may not all have its answer in a prescription. This, keeping the mind and the hand active, the creative part of it, the whole bit, wood is good. In this case, wood for good. All right, I'm done. Go ahead. Next question, Frick. How's our audience, by the way?
We're at 600.
Okay.
Jack Lane,
Hi, Jack.
San Antonio. Says,
San Antoine.
have you had any luck getting cabinet door rail and style bits professionally sharpened? And did the joints still fit tightly?
So Jack is asking about these. As I was talking to you about shapers, so shaper cutters were always used to make. Jake, are you going to come on soon?
Give me a couple minutes.
I just want to show
Yeah.
them. Shapers were always used to make stile and rails. So it would be a coped joint. And you would cut on the end of one and it would fit into the long, you cut the end grain, here we talk about that again. Cut the end grain of the stile, of the rail, the one that goes this way, and it would go into the long grain cut, the opposite long grain cut on the edge of the stile, which runs vertically. Well, now they make the same thing, they make it in router bits. So this one cuts the male portion, this one cuts the female portion. Are we all right?
Yeah.
So the problem I find with I've never used them enough. I've only used, I don't think this one has never been used. I've only used them a few times. I don't typically make my doors that way. But the minute you sharpen these, you're changing the profile somewhat. Because as you sharpen this, you're pulling that in. It's like trying to sharpen, they're almost a throwaway at this point. If you take thank you, Jake. If you take a quarter round bit, so that's designed to cut a 1/2 inch, 7/16. What is it?
Should
Whatever.
Be half. Should be half.
Is it? That's
Should
not half.
use on handles.
No, that's not half. Anyway, this is the one right here. So if you take that 1/2 inch quarter round, and after it gets dull, if you get it sharpened, what they do when they sharpen it is they don't touch the profile here, they simply hone this face. Well, in honing this face, they're moving that surface that way. And as they do, they're going to take this diameter right here, which keeps it flush with the bearing, and they're going to go in like that. So now you're going to have a little bit of a lip. So once you've sharpened it one time, it's no longer effective as a flush trim without leaving you a little bit of a ridge right there. And we go through lots of those, so I know that for a fact. Same thing with these. The first time you flatten them, or first time you sharpen them, you're going to change that profile. Will it make much of a difference? Well, they're designed to fit as they come new, so I would assume that you're not going to get quite as good a fit. I wasn't terribly impressed with these either when I did it. It didn't fit snugly like I would like. And I don't think you can really adjust them. Maybe you can. I didn't play around with it much. When I make a door, here's the most recent one we did. So this, you can't see it because it's on the bottom side, but this is a mortise and tenon. It's haunched, so there's a little bit of it that sticks out into the groove. Makes for a really strong joint. I much prefer to do what I would call the craftsman style as opposed to the cabinet maker style. And don't take that personally. There's furniture, there's cabinet making, and then there's furniture making, and it's a different level. I also like to do I often like to do a mitered frame, and throwing in a spline to make it nice and strong. And just I find that the cope and rail type cabinet door, unless it's reinforced with dowels or something, that joint doesn't last very long. It's quite easily broken because there's not a lot of good glue contact surface in that. So sorry, Jack, I can't really answer that, but I would suspect that based on my experience with other router bits, once you sharpen them, you change that profile enough that it might make a difference. Frick, next.
Next question comes from Christian Estrada in Guatemala.
Hi, Christian, in Guatemala.
What's a good way to collect the waste that comes out of
How
a
do I
router?
say howdy in Spanish?
Hola?
Hola? Hola.
¿Está? What's a good way to collect the waste that comes out of a router?
What's the good way to collect the waste that comes out of the router? Well, as I showed you on this, it's nice to have something that's built in, because if it's built in, it's usually going to work really well. I don't have it in this shop, but in the other shop, in the other building, when I do the handles, It's really dirty. So I built a box that is closed on this side, the back. I have a piece of plexiglass on the top, and it's open here. And I've got a 4-inch dust collecting hose coming into it, and I really have that thing sucking hard. I've also got the vacuum cleaner underneath using that same system I showed you. And because it's enclosed on 1, 2,
Five.
3, 4 sides, open on the front,
Oh,
it
well,
does a really good job of collecting that. So wood sides and back with a hole in it where the hose comes in, plexiglass on the top so I can see everything I'm doing. Does a fantastic job of containing the dust. In fact, when we do that, there's no dust escapes for the router table. As far as how you're going to do it with a handheld router, well, as good as this is, it's limited in what you're going to be able to collect. So I guess the answer would be get one of these. Hardly any dust. Next, Rick.
So I'm just going to say hi to a couple vets that I see.
Yeah, who's out there?
They're messaging Megan, but so I don't see them. But anyway, if you want to shout out, just just type "frick" in capital letters first, and then
Ken's going to handle that. So,
is he?
So have them.
I have a bunch here.
Oh, okay. Well then,
So
I'll let Ken do it.
how do we flag him?
Well,
Ken,
if Ken is watching the chat, then he can pick them out.
Yeah, I got a bunch here.
But what do you want them to say?
I'll see them. All I gotta do is say they're a combat wounded vet.
Okay. Who you got, Ken?
Al
Bring
McNeil.
back. Al McNeil.
Al McNeil.
Thank you, Al. You'll notice the flags are flying correctly. 105 millimeter anti-tank, fin stabilized, discardable sable round. Tell me if I got that right, Al. Al was in our class 2 weeks ago. Al also works here. Al is a retired Canadian Army tank commander. And Al, I got to tell you this. So Al, one of the things Al likes to do, being a tank commander and liking machinery, so we buy really good old woodworking machines, mostly General. And Al does the job of completely restoring them and making them look brand new. And what we are doing is we're putting soon to be a page on our website. We'll be able to buy this stuff. And the entire, if you pay $3,000 for it, all $3,000 is going to go towards finishing our Purple Heart workshop, including all the artwork that's being done on this wall. So even though we bought it, we're donating our proceeds, we're donating what we spent on it, plus the wage to Al. The total purchase price will go to helping that. So remember that when you pay for it. But we'll be ready to put up there 2 General 260s. They're already done. That's the big General lathe, big machine. We sold the 8-inch jointer. We have a Makita combination joiner planer, 12-inch with a 6-inch jointer. We have a 14-inch older model Delta bandsaw. We'll take Delta if it's old enough. It was good stuff. We've got Al's just working on now a General combination 16-inch disc, 6x24 belt sander. Great machine. It's sitting right there if you want to take a quick peek at it. And what else have we got out there?
the Delta planer.
Yes, we got a 14-inch Delta planer, older model. We've got 2 scroll saws. We've got a Hegner, which is one of the best brands you'll find. And we have a Excalibur. And that was the one that was made in Quebec. So watch for it. Anyway, Al's on vacation, but he'll be back Tuesday, I trust.
Sue B's on.
Hi, Sue.
Doc Bailey.
Someday we'll get down to visit you again.
Doc Bailey, class of April.
Yeah, Doc Bailey. Doc was the Navy corpsman.
Attached to the Marine.
Attached to the Marines, Vietnam.
Doc Bailey. Gordon Patnude, but he didn't say if he's combat wounded, but he just said he was a vet.
Hi, Gordon.
Matt Olson, combat wounded vet, and firefighter and paramedic.
Hey, Matt. Special tip of the hat to you.
Shawn McDermott.
Shawn McDermott. So stop right there. Stop right there. Time for a commercial. All right. So let me talk to me. Let's see. I want to show you something. If you know who I am, you know I'm all about cutting dovetails, and now I hope I'm known better for teaching other people how to cut dovetails. And most people say, well, Rob, you're great at it. I want to be able to cut dovetails like you. So I want to show you something. So there's a dovetail that I cut, okay? And if you've ever watched me do it, it's done right from the saw. There's no paring. You cut it, glue it, and you put it together. Well, here's some student work from last week. Who was this? Oh, I got my glasses on. No. Is that Matt?
Yes.
Oh, it's Matt. Matt from Toronto. Okay, so there's Matt's. Look closely. And here's one. I'm not sure. Nobody's name is on that. But I got one from Eric over here. Eric's from Newfoundland. Eric, listen, get a load of this. Can you pronounce Eric's last name?
Helmerson.
Helmerson. So Eric joined the Canadian Army at age 50.
He's here tonight, just so you know.
Yeah. And came within pieces of a second of setting a record or breaking a record. Scored extremely high in infantry school. Turned 59 on the front lines in Afghanistan. His commander brought him out a birthday cake. Fought alongside his son. Great picture I have. So here's Eric. Eric is now 70. Is Eric 70? I think he is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. No, I went through and I said, okay, let me nitpick for you. So the little arrows are just some little wee tiny points, but there's Eric's dovetail. Okay? Assembled from the saw. Now, that's some pretty remarkable work. So you say to yourself, well, Rob, that's great. These guys were here. They had your tutelage. They were able to do it. Well, okay. The only difference between being in the class and watching me on YouTube is the fact that we're together, and in another case, we're not. But what makes a huge difference is our new technique. And our new technique is all about using the tailboard. That's the one part you would find on the side of the drawer. Using the tailboard to go through, or to use it to mark your pins. So after you've made your cuts, you don't remove the waste. You take a dovetail marking knife, and we should see a flood of orders for these tonight, because if you really want to learn to cut dovetails, you just have to pay attention to what I'm saying. I promise you, this is what's going to make a difference. There's a dovetail marking knife. We got a new blade, smaller teeth. And you put that dovetail marking knife down in that saw curve that you made, and you use that to start the curve from the second piece. If you do this right, when you're done, you end up with all of these saw curves outlining your pins. Saw curves that are deep enough that you come along with your dovetail saw, because that blade is the same as this blade. And you literally set that saw in that curve. There's no guessing whether it should be here or here. It can only go in one spot in that curve. And you finish the cut. And the results are, the majority of the people in the class are going to have perfect dovetails. Well, there was only one fly in the ointment. When you offset, and you got to get your head wrapped around this, when you offset your tailboard from your pin board, and I'm not going to go through and, but
Picture's gone.
I'm not, oh, your picture's gone? Brick, what's going on? I was on a roll.
Keep going.
Well, I like to have the video.
You want the close-up video?
Oh, we're back over here? Okay, we'll try to do it over here until you get together. So knowing where to position the tailboard over the pin board, and we've got videos that you can go in and we, in fact, didn't we just do one, Jake, on that? The 7 things about cutting dovetails? Yeah. And explained it. Go check out that video and you'll find it. Well, I've been doing it with a marking gauge. I would use the marking gauge to go in and measure the thickness of my saw curve, and then I would set the marking gauge on the side of the board. And one way it was okay. When you were doing one side, you would just set it like this, and it wasn't difficult. But when you did the other side, you actually had to balance your marking gauge on the end of the cutter. Are you on? Yeah, okay, thank you. On like that, and if you're doing this for the first time, that's a little bit awkward. That gauge is heavy and you're trying to balance it. Well, Shawn was in the class, and I don't know what point in the class, but he came up with this idea, and he'd taken a piece of wood, and he had cut a little the
Rebate?
thickness of the saw curve, a little rebate on one, so you could use it to position the two pieces. Well, it took us a couple of years to put it all together, but we made a few small adjustments, and then we came out with this. This is called the Shawn Shim. And you'll notice on the end, there's a 23 thou, 24 thou, 25, 26. What that means is that step right there is 23 thousandths of an inch. That one is 24, 25, and 26. And it's the same on the opposite side. So now instead of trying to balance this marking gauge, you set that right there. Or if you'd like to do it like Luther does, you can actually clamp it right there, and now it's hands-free. If you want to tighten the joint up a little bit, you can just make it, actually, you would go a little bit less. Pardon me, go a little bit more, which would make your pins a little bit fatter, and that's all explained. But the idea is this, I couldn't believe how much of a difference it made in doing this the first time I used it. So you do it this way for one, then when you do the other side, you flip it this way, and then you simply move your board over to touch it. Extremely precise, made out of brass, and we just got a huge shipment in, so they're there to be had. If you want better dovetails, get a Shawn Shim. I'm not saying that to try to sell them to you, as much as I'm saying that to help you make better dovetails. And trust me, first week that you try this, you'll have one that you will not believe you did. By the way, you need my saw too. Shawn. Next, Frick, no, I'm sorry, Ken, who else is up there? I'll try not to be quite as windy.
Eric, you mentioned already.
Yep.
Jerry Galat, he was a Vietnam vet.
Hi, Jerry.
Joe Bright.
Joe Bright. Joseph Bright.
And Ben.
Joe, I need to hear how you're doing, so send me a text. Well, I'll give you a call tomorrow, Joe.
And Jim Rossetti from the Bench Brigade is on.
Jim. So, did I already tell Jim's story? I probably should. I'm just going to tell it real quick, because I think it's remarkable that he did this. When we planned our first class in September, we had actually planned to do one back in June when they were going to open up the local 4 Atlantic provinces. And we have to have a bench for every vet. And we only had 2 Canadians volunteer to do it, and one died before he got it finished. And he was a good friend of ours, Lloyd Kachuk. So a group of Americans, and Moose will address this tonight, like you would expect, stepped up to the plate, made the benches, had them delivered to Calais, Maine. My wife went down and picked them up. Well, Jim came down from Moncton, which is about an hour and a half away, came down to buy some stuff, and I gave him the tour all the way through, and somehow that story got told. And he said, "You mean to tell me there weren't enough Canadian volunteers to build benches for our Canadian vets?" I said, "Well, sort of, kind of." He went home, and he had just started a new woodworking guild called the Kodiak Woodworkers in Moncton, which is the largest city in New Brunswick. And he called me, or he texted me, he says, "Rob," he said, "I canvassed the guild, and we'll commit to making 10 benches each year for the Purple Heart Project, so the Canadian vets will have a bench." And I just thought that was fantastic. And Jim, also, you need to check this out. Let me come back to CBC. What did I want to tell you? Oh, the reason why this is so important is we like to have the vets come here, work on their own bench, and then take it home with them right afterwards, which means that they're going home with their bench and their tools, and they can pick up Monday morning right where they left off Saturday night, not missing a beat. So the gal who is the president of the club that Jim started has a friend in the CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's kind of our national news. So they contacted us, and the gal that came, her dad fought in World War II. He's still alive. So I think she was very sympathetic to our cause. So if you go to cbc.ca and search Rob Cosman, you'll see a really nice video that they did when they came in. Al was on there, Tony was on there, Jim was on there. Who are we pointing at? Oh, the camera? Oh. Thank you, Moose. They interviewed me, and they interviewed, what was Jim's friend's name that came down with them, the former RCMP officer? Oh, my memory's only so good.
Don't they call him Captain?
Captain?
Captain or general?
General? I don't know, but great people. So thank you. Thank you, Kodiak Woodworkers. I appreciate your support. And so they've got the benches for the group of vets that are coming in October, and they're going to be here personally to present them, which is another big plus. Okay, anybody else, Ken? No. Okay, so Frick, back to questions.
7:54.
4 minutes, Moose?
Okay, a couple Canadians in here, both Herb Wolf and Justin Knockert from Ontario and Manitoba, respectively. They want to know.
Jay? No, Justin.
Justin.
Oh, so Herb Wolf's on there?
Yeah, he's from Windsor,
We
Ontario.
know where
Yeah,
Herb's from.
Herb was with us all week.
Yeah.
Feeling much better, Herb? Glad to hear it. Kim was happy.
And Justin from Manitoba. They both asked the same question: was how do you sharpen the carbide part of your router bit?
Well, it's not a perfect system, and there's you need to find somebody that sharpens them and does a really good job. I had one here. His name was Danny Dow, but he has since retired. So we can get these. So this is a credit card size piece of steel. It's got 1,000 grit on one side, 600 on the other, and this is diamond. And what you would do is you would go in. Now I'd have to take the bearing off. But it's much easier if you actually hold it this way and run that carbide surface over that diamond. And it takes a long time because what you don't sharp, you never touch that. That'll change your profile. You go in and you work on that face and bring it back. But when they do it, it's all automated, and they have a wheel, and they'll come in, they'll take off a fair bit to make sure that it gets sharp. But it's a bit of a pain. I wonder if I have one here that would be, I actually have one that doesn't have this one. So if I was going to sharpen that profile, which doesn't have a bearing on it, I'd set it like that. It's hard on the hands, and you're going to sit there. You don't have to push hard on the against the diamond. And you got to do the same amount on both sides. And you got to clean, what you have to do in order to get it sharp is you've got to lower the material right here so you get down below that radius that has dulled it. And in order to lower that material there, so if you can imagine looking at this, at one point, there was your cutting edge, cutting right here. And it's become more like this. So in order to get it sharp again, you've got to bring it down to here so that becomes back to being like that. That means you got to remove all of that material. Well, that's a boatload of material, and this stuff is hard. And personally, I would rather go buy another bit. But if you're going to try it, or you can use your diamond plate that we sell, same thing. But it's not a quick fix. It takes a fair bit of time, and I suppose if you stopped frequently and did it before it got really bad, you'd be better off. But who does that? Where's that go? These things are all in order. By the way, just a little side note. In our online workshop, we've been making shop furniture. And this is one of the recent pieces we did, which is a nice little cabinet to store all my router bits. So I know where they are. And they can easily take them out so you can work on them, put them back when you're done. I don't do that very often. Okay. We covered that? All right, so it's 8 o'clock. How's our audience?
We have 622.
Primed and ready. I'm going to tell you one more time. So our giveaways tonight are for first responders. If you are a first responder, please register. We're going to give away a lot of stuff tonight. But right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn time over to Moose. Moose has been a good friend of ours for a number of years. He supports us in what we do with our dead cat sweaters. He has a display in this. He has in St. John, New Brunswick. There is a market. It's Canada's oldest open farmers market that's still in operation. Built 150 years ago. Around that. Yeah. 150 years ago. You were just a young fellow then. I was. Yeah. And by the way, it's also Moose's birthday this week. I won't tell you how old he is, but I will tell you he can still score on the ice. And anyway, so Moose's business is right in the center stalls and his business was primarily a tourist business, and we have a big cruise ship industry. So, and most of those cruise ships would be full of Americans that are coming up to visit St. John. We are the Loyalist city, so when the United Empire Loyalists were kicked out of United States, a lot of them immigrated to here, this area, and St. John was a big receiving port. So September 11 of 2001 impacted us in very much the same way that it impacted you, because you'll never meet a Canadian that doesn't have an American relative. It's as simple as that. And I'm gonna not do any more. I'm gonna let Moose take it away.
Okay, I had to write this down because, can you hear if I laid this down?
I can give him my mic.
Yeah, do that. Well, that's a dangerous thing to do. So, I wanted to write this down because it was very emotional, going back to the time that this happened. And as everyone says, you always remember when this happened. And Rob's right. We see thousands of Americans every year, and we haven't for the last 2 years, basically. And in the last few months and weeks, it's been wonderful to start seeing our American friends in the market again. So I have a very big spot in my heart for our folks who live south. So I'm just going to tell my story here. 20 years ago today is seared in my memory forever. I remember I was at a retail show in Halifax, Nova Scotia with my wife, Pat, on a several-day shopping excursion looking for new products to feature on our 2 little shops in the city market. This is an annual thing that we went to together. These were usually exhilarating and enjoyable days when we got to spend a lot of time together and discover new opportunities for our businesses. That all changed in a heartbeat. As one of her longtime suppliers, a prominent artist from Fredericton, New Brunswick, was clearly in great distress, and we soon learned that her daughter was in the vicinity of the Twin Towers in New York, and we were all soon in clusters throughout the complex, wherever a TV could be found, watching the horror unfold. There was no business done that day. Time had stopped and nothing else mattered. Evil, hatred, disregard for innocent had gripped us by the throat. To see our longtime associate in such inconsolable distress over the possibility that her daughter may be in danger makes it impossible to imagine the pain of those who actually experienced loss that dark day from the needless act of hatred. On display that day were the 2 extreme edges of humanity: utter and complete hatred versus incredible selflessness, compassion, and courage. And it's the latter that I will turn my thoughts to on this tragic milestone. The Purple Heart Project is dedicated to making a positive difference in the lives of brave men and women everywhere who have and continue to put at risk their physical and mental well-being in the service of our countries. 20 years ago today, for 412 emergency workers made their final effort to make the difference in the life of someone they didn't even know, just doing their job. Pushing their fears to the back, they walked and ran into a situation that their training would have surely told them was gravely perilous. Yet they pushed on. It is impossible to be involved in the Purple Heart Project and not acknowledge this group of true heroes who have demonstrated the ultimate goodness in humanity. As someone who has had the great experience of visiting towns and cities of our neighbor to the south, and who has had the joy of meeting thousands of our American friends at my shops in the city market, I've always felt you are like family, and we shouldn't even have borders. One of the enduring tragedies of this despicable event is that it thickened our borders and made it more challenging for us to be family. On this day, when so many of our American brothers and sisters are feeling the weight of this anniversary, I offer a love letter to your family, from your family in Canada. And this is a little poem called To Our Family. We have thrived in peace for over 200 years. We are an example of the best countries can be. We fight, argue, call names, and pull each other's hair, but no one else better touch either one of us, because we will fight and die shoulder to shoulder for each other. We are there for each other when the chips are down. If you have a thorn in your shoe, our feet feel the pain. If you have a tear in your eye, we feel your sadness. If your heart is broken, we feel your loss. On the anniversary of this dreadful attack, always know, brothers and sisters, we have your back. And that's from me and the PHA family. Thank you very much.
Glad to know I'm not the only one. Trade the microphones.
Oh, I thought you were gone.
Well put, Moose. Well put. I had a chance to read that ahead of time, so it took some of the edge off it for me. I also wanted to give a shout out. I'm going to lighten things up real quick. So if any of you follow Super Dave on Facebook, how would they find that? Just friend him?
Yeah, he accepts everyone. He's pretty desperate.
Everyone except for Jeff. So you go to Facebook and you search David Benson, and you'll notice that Super Dave's wife took a cue from mine. They did the dog thing. Now they're doing the goat thing. Your horses are coming next. So they have all these goats, and every one day of the week she has goat therapy week. And it's always a picture of these little miniature goats running all over the place, and Dave out there with them. So we have decided that we have upped his game. He is no longer Super Dave. He is now the Goat Dave. And hopefully you all understand what GOAT stands for. Just in case you don't, greatest of all time. Has a double meaning. So see you, Goat. The other one I want to mention too is James. So there's a restaurant in St. John, New Brunswick called Sawana. It's fantastic. I was introduced to James. We were looking for bodies to fill up our ranks playing hockey. And Jake said, he says, I got a guy, he's a good hockey player, but he's a really nice guy. Lots of
I
good
never said that. I said he was a decent hockey player.
There's lots of good hockey players, but the combination of a good hockey player and a really nice guy, the really nice guy matters more. And James played hockey with us all summer, and just like Jake said he was, fantastic. Well, he came to me 3 weeks ago and said, Rob, I would like to provide dinner for your guys one night. I said, well, that's awesome. So he sent out dinner for the entire crew. There was at least 20 of us, all the vets and the civilians in the class. The food was awesome. So if you're looking for a place and you're in St. John, go to Shawn.
It's not that hard.
Shawn. How come I can't get my tongue around it?
Yes, it is.
Very hard.
Shahosky has
Shahosky-
troubled him for months.
Shahusky's
Anyway.
way harder than
Thai food, by the way.
It's not done. So he was up here, James was up here yesterday, and he said, Rob, we're having our grand opening tonight, and I've reserved a spot for you and your wife. I said, well, thank you very much. And he said, we've chosen 2 charities to support, and one of them is the PHP. I said, well, that's awesome. So we went there last night, dressed in our best T-shirts. You got to understand this. We pull up, and they've got one of those big backdrops with the name of the restaurant and the photographer there, and everybody showing up in their tuxedos and their evening gowns, getting their picture taken. Kim and I show up in our PHP T-shirts. We got our picture taken. Anyway, I had to stand up and speak, and that was always tough to do because close to my heart. But they raised $2,000 for us last night, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And you know, I'm going to put a little bit in here for PHP. We don't need money, but we allow people to participate that way because I do it for the way it makes me feel. And if you're on the other side of the world, you can't be here to help physically, but by sending money and paying for something for one of these vets, you get to share that same feeling. So my blessings to you. But we don't have to beg for money. It'll happen regardless. What we do need is help finding these combat wounded vets. The ones that are the worst off are isolated. I talked to one last night. I called and talked. In fact, this morning, actually, I had to call him back a second time because I reread his application and said, I got to make sure he comes. We went back and we had a little deeper conversation. But after the event, and I told the story of some real heartbreaking situations that we've witnessed. And this lady came to me afterwards as we were leaving in tears. And through her tears, I managed to get what she was saying, that her husband is a combat wounded vet, stranded at home because of fear of, because of mental combat wounds. It turns out it's James' sister I'm talking to, and it's her husband. So they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And the more people that know about it, the better chance we're going to have of finding them and bring them here and possibly helping them. I have no idea what it does. All I know is the majority of them walk away on a better path, and those who continue with it, like the goat, become fully functioning. Fully functioning? What's your opinion on that, Jake?
No comment.
No comment.
We
Is
just
he on
name
with
him-
us tonight?
No.
Dave? Goat Dave?
Just call him Super Goat.
Super Goat? Super Goat. Anyway, so a big shout out to James. Thank you, brother. We certainly appreciate it. We'll see you on this Monday. And if you're wearing a different color, all bets are off. Shout out to our last class.
Some are here.
Some are here. So Tony Bahadur. Actually, I wasn't going to do the last name just for some people might not want that.
So it's just Tony.
Tony, just Tony. Yeah, cancel the Bahadur. Al, we already talked to Al. Blaze, and big thank you, Blaze. Blaze is up in Quebec, and he helped me out last night, which is fantastic. Herb, we just talked to. Jay, thank you, Jay. Now, Jay and Herb didn't come as scholarship vets, but both are combat wounded vets, and they just wanted to come participate, and I'm glad that they did. Dave in PEI, awesome, Dave. Eric, I showed you Eric's dovetail over in Newfoundland. What a story. Colin, thank you, Colin. And Dwayne Johnson. And we called him the Rock all week. I wasn't supposed to say the last name, but anyway, Dwayne, super, from Newfoundland.
just Dwayne.
And Jesse Rufians. And Jesse came from our previous class, came back to be my assistant that night, and absolutely fantastic. Jesse, thank you so much. He's on tonight. Oh, Jesse is? Brother, I'm getting it. Yeah, you know what you're waiting for, and I'm working on it. I'll get it for you. Now, in our upcoming class, I've managed to get through to 5 of the 7. I got a hold of Kyle. I'm going to tell you his name. Kyle Perrell, Newfoundland Regiment, came to the class with Jesse, and as our first of 2 Canadians we've ever had several years ago. Kyle's coming back and is going to be my assistant that week, which I'm excited about. Freddie in Edmonton is coming. Sim, because I can't pronounce his first name. He's from Quebec, but he says his friends call him Sim, so I'm going to be his friend. Mark in Burton, New Brunswick. I haven't got a hold of the next guy yet. Can't say his name. And haven't got a hold of that one yet either. And John in Ormocto, got a hold of them. Oh, no, and Mike in Alberta, I got a hold of. Mike, so great guys. Looking forward to it. You're going to love it. I promise that. You will love it. All right, next question.
All right.
How are we doing for donations? How many saws are we giving away tonight?
We are just over 1,000 so far.
So 1 saw so far. Let's up it up.
All right. This one comes from Mike Curry in Delavan, Wisconsin.
Hi, Mike.
Is there a rule of thumb for when to use a powered router versus a non-powered router like a Stanley 71?
Is there a rule of thumb? I don't think so.
When to use each?
But I will tell you this. So these are router planes. If I had to go in and deepen a groove, before I would put a straight bit in a power router, I would get out my router plane and I would do it with that. A lot more control, a better result. You don't have a spinning bit that if you accidentally hit the side, you're going to put a big divot in it. This would be the choice. I would say that everybody that woodworks should have one or both of these. They're not terribly expensive, but they are incredibly useful. As far as when to use them, I told you my preference. It's always about
when you need more accuracy.
yeah, it's all about control. And this gives you maximum control, and this spinning router bit at 24,000 RPM, it can get out of control too easily. Next question, Frick.
Jim Merzetti
Hey,
from
Jim.
the Kodiak Woodworkers Guild in Riverview, who you spoke of earlier.
Yes.
I can improve the edge. Okay, let me see. I can improve the edge of a dull straight bit using lapping film, but would like to see your preferred method to get better results.
Read that again. I'm not catching all of it.
He says he can improve the edge of a dull straight bit using a lapping film, but would like to see your preferred method so that he can get better
He
results.
can improve the edge of a flat, straight router bit, so something like that,
Using lapping film.
with lapping
But
film.
what do you use, basically, is what he's asking.
Well, on something small like that, Jim, I don't want to sound like I have more money than brains, but when this gets dull, I discard it. It's too much work to go in there and do it. Now, if I send it out to somebody to sharpen, they could, but that carbide's pretty thin, so I don't think you would get a full sharpening on that, because they'll take a quarter of that off when they sharpen, and that doesn't leave much, maybe one. But would I try to do that by my hand? No, I don't bother. It's too much work. I've gone through in times on a Saturday night when I didn't have a choice, couldn't buy another router bit, and I had to get that sharp, and it's so much work to do. As I showed you, I use that little, either I use the edge of my diamond plate or I use one of these little diamond credit card things that work better than anything else I've used, but my preference is to send them out and have somebody do it. I'll sharpen most everything else, but that stuff I don't.
All right, next one comes from Terry in Tennessee.
Terry?
No, wait. Where'd that go? Yes. What is a good set of
Terry.
What is a good set of bits for a total beginner with routers?
Oh, okay. Well, I brought them up in front of me. Well, you know what? I'm glad you asked that. It gives me a chance to talk about it. I have two brands that I would highly recommend. One is Whiteside. Whiteside is in North Carolina. Great people. Friend of mine, Jamie, just went to work for them, and they make that. They make great bits. American-made, fantastic product. That and Freud. I think Freud also makes great bits. You find them everywhere. I like what they do. I really like this because we use a lot of these. So when we're doing the profile on our saw handles, I don't know what that extra cutter in there does, but it works nicely. So of the two brands that I would recommend to anybody first, before I get into the specifics, would be Whiteside and Freud. So what would be a starter bit? Well, this is kind of tough to answer, because if you're into curlicues on your work, then you're going to want various profiles. I stick plain. I have a lot of quarter rounds. So I have quarter rounds from 1/8 inch right up through to 3/4 inch. I use the opposite, which is a
Corba?
a bead, or I guess what you would call that. So lots of those. I have chamfer bits. And if you look through all of mine, that's mostly what you see. Here's a bull nose that cuts a full half round. These are all quarter rounds. These are all bull nose. So I really don't have a big selection of bits when it comes to different shapes. Now there's one, bit of an OG. Doesn't get a whole lot of use. So my suggestion would be quarter rounds, a full complement of quarter rounds. You're going to want straight bits. You're going to want flush trims. It just works a lot easier in a lot of applications. So you want yourself some good flush trims, and then you need some regular straight bits that will cut on the bottom. You can't cut on the bottom with something like that where a bearing sits on it. So you have to have a bit specifically made for cutting on the bottom. So when you're digging down in or hollowing something out, you want to be able to do that. So I would get a couple of sizes. I would suggest that you go with 1/2-inch shanks. So there's 1/2 inch, 3/8, and quarter. 3/8 are not very common at all. This is a 1/4 inch shank, and this is light duty. You're not ever going to put a 1/2 inch into this. But you can always put in a 1/2 inch shank, a 1/2 inch router, you can always put a 1/4 inch bit because you get a little collar. I don't have one right here at my fingertips. It's just, it just takes up the difference. So you put it down in there, it's got a 1/4 inch hole in it, and it collapses on itself, and then you can put any 1/4 inch bit into a 1/2 inch router. But I would probably stick with the 1/2 inch shanks just because they're going to be a little more robust. They don't chatter as bad. Heavy duty, I guess would be the best way to say it. So you're going to want a selection of straight bits. You're going to want some flush trims. You want some quarter rounds, and you want some beads. And if you're going to make wood hinge boxes, then you've got to get some core box bits to cut a 1/2 round. That would be my recommendation based on what I do. And maybe a chamfer bit. So a chamfer bit is just going to cut a 45 for you. And if you've got a big chamfer to do, you'd cut it with that, and then you come in with your block plane, and you take 1 or 2 passes to get rid of the mill marks, the little circular cuts, and you're good to go. Commercial number 2. I'm going to do commercial number 2 right now, okay? Now, if you haven't...
We do need to take time to address the elephant in the room that I'm shocked people haven't asked questions regarding.
Oh, well, if they haven't asked, then we'll make it a topic for another night. Nobody's asked.
We've been sent hundreds of emails in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll address that. We'll do this one first. So I'd like to say, raise your hand if you're over 50. And I'd be willing to bet that's the majority of our audience. And if you live anywhere near Canada and you're over 50, you've probably already started to experience a little bit of arthritis in your hands, especially in the winter. They start to ache. Well, Stanley developed the hand plane however many years ago, 120, 130, 140 years ago. And this is called the adjuster knob. And you turn that knob to make the blade go down so you have a thicker shaving. You go counterclockwise to pull the blade out so you get a thinner shaving. This adjuster knob is a pain to turn. I've done everything I could over the years. I cut slots in it, but no matter what, trying to make that adjustment with your finger is just plain tough. And the older you get, the more difficult it becomes. Well, enter. It's a project Jake and I worked on with a good friend of mine, Paul Hayden, good friend of ours. Paul's in Ontario. I call him a genius because whenever I've had an idea, he's been the one that's been able to turn it into a product. And Paul, if you haven't said it enough, we appreciate you beyond the amount we can measure. So this is called the Adjust Star. And what it does is it trades that very difficult wheel that gives you terrible leverage to a 5-spoke adjust star, and you simply push down on those paddles, whether you're retracting it or advancing it. On the shooting board, it is so much easier to adjust than to stop and try to manipulate that wheel. If you haven't got one of these, get one. My goodness, what are you waiting for? So we make them for Wood River planes and Luban. We make them for Lee Nielsen's.
Which also fit the bench dog.
Which what? Oh, it does? Oh. And we just came out, we did a beta test, and they worked Now make them for Stanleys. Stanleys and records. That'll fit on there. Now you may have to take your handle off in order to get it on, but once you put it on, you just put the handle back on and enjoy it. And I love it when I get emails from older woodworkers and they tell me the same story. Rob, I haven't been able to use my plane in 15 years and now I can. Thank you. What greater reward for coming up with a product than that? Yet I still look at it and I think, why didn't somebody think of this sooner? So that's the Adjust-R. We've got lots of them in stock. We just got a big shipment. So get them and make your planing so much easier. Okay, now Frick, next question.
Next question comes from Dan in Florida. How would you use the router to make a groove in the sides of a cutting board, ensuring a perfect cut and stability of the router?
Oh, yeah. So is it Dan in Florida?
Dan in Florida, yep.
Dan in Florida. Well, I'll come down in January, Dan, and teach you how. So what Dan's talking about is sometimes it's nice to have on your cutting board a little groove all the way around the perimeter so the juice will run into that instead of on the floor. And typically you're going to use what's called a bullnose. So a bullnose bit is, bear with me here, looking at it and not seeing it. There. So where are we? Up here? So there's your bullnose bit. It cuts a half round. Now the problem with that is all about rim speed, remember? So this is going to be turning a lot faster out here than it is in the center. And it's going to have a real tendency to burn on you if you go too slow. So you have to keep it moving. And the problem is that it's cutting all the way around, so it's very difficult to control. What I would do, Dan, if I was making cutting boards, and it would be really nice if they're all the same size, is I would use, I would have an inside template, and I would have something so that I could put that bit in there, and I could run, I could clamp it. Now you might have to do this in 2 stages, and as I'm thinking about this, I said this is going to be tough. I would use double-sided tape. You'd be surprised how well that stuff works. Use double-sided tape to keep your template in place, and then you can go around and you can use a rub collar like Bobbert was asking earlier. So a rub collar in this case would be I've got to fix that piece of collar broken on that. A rub collar would be up above the cutter. So your cutter is going to come down, there's going to be a rub collar around here, and that rub collar would run around your template. That would be your guide so that would make its cut all the way around. And I would also want to design it so that there weren't any, the worst thing is when you stop in a corner. Because you come into a corner, you're going to be slow enough that it's going to burn on you almost every time. But if you could turn that into a radius, and I would take 1 pass, and probably a 2nd pass, and maybe even a final 3rd pass. And on your 3rd pass, you're making a very, very light cut so that you can move it rapidly enough that it'll leave a nice finish and no burns. But to try to do that no way you're going to freehand it and make it look right, because it, like I said, it's cutting all the way around the perimeter and it's going to want to move and slide on you. But a template in the middle. The best thing would probably be double-sided tape, unless you could if you clamp it, then you've got to go and you got to stop and reposition your clamp. And whenever you stop, you end up getting that little transition mark to be able to go all the way around and then lift it off on the last one. Going to take a little bit of thinking, but that's where I would start and that's how I would do it. Next, Frick.
All right. Next one comes from Matt Mays in Alabama.
Hi, Matt.
He says, when would you need a 3 horsepower plus router other than for large panel bits? Thanks for all that you do and keep up the great work.
Thank you. It's like a table saw. People ask me about table saws all the time. I said, should I buy a 5 horsepower, 7.5 horsepower, or 3 horsepower? Ken, have we ever stalled our saws? No.
Once.
So.
There was once, it was in Osage Orange.
Yeah, somebody stalled it?
Yeah, it bound up tight.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I do remember that. In a hobby shop, you are never going to stall a 3 horse. You probably wouldn't even stall a horse and 3/4. When you need the bigger horsepowers, whether you're talking table saw or router, is when you're using it all day long, continuous. I don't think you need a 3 horsepower router. I can't imagine ever needing it. We use it over there because sometimes I'm running that machine for hours on end. So then you need it. The 2 horsepower, which is lighter, easier to maneuver, that would be my choice. So I don't think you're ever going to need a 3 horse. As I said, unless you're doing production work, which means you're running that router for multiple hours at a time. That's the only reason I could think of having it. Same thing with a table saw. Next question, Frick.
All right, next question comes from Herbie in England.
Hey, Herbie.
He says, would you ever contemplate using a router to join drawer sides instead of dovetails? And if so, what profile?
Banish the thoughts. Next.
Tim in Austin. Are astro-coated white side bits worth the extra cost, or should bits be considered to be regularly sharpened instruments? Astro-coated white side bits.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. I know there's some bits that have replaceable cutter inserts, and I've never used them, but I think it's a good idea, especially if you don't have someone close by that can sharpen your bits for you. But I can't comment on that question because I can't, I've never used them, so don't know. But I do like the idea of a replaceable carbide insert, that you can get new carbide inserts and you always maintain that profile, which is good. Next, Frick.
Tony in Iowa wants to know if you prefer a plunge router versus a standard router.
I said that earlier, I'll say it again. The advantage of a plunge is being able to come, advantage of a plunge is if you're working somewhere in the middle of something, you have the advantage of having your router sitting positive in a nice place, and then you can simply come in, drop it down into position, and go. That's really, you can't do that. To try to do that with a fixed base, to hold it there and then try to screw that down thing in and maneuver it, very difficult. The disadvantage of a plunge router is they only grip on one side. There's always 2 rods they run on. They only grip on one side. And on most means you can actually wiggle it. You can sit there and move that in and out a little bit because it's only grabbing on that one side. Whereas a fixed base clamps all the way around. So when I push that in like that, this collar is split right here, and what I've just done is squeeze that whole thing around it so that's rock solid and doesn't move. So you have flexibility here. You have a really solid unit here. So you got to take the good with the bad. Now, there is a, I think Bosch makes one. I actually have one, don't know where it is. Bosch makes one which comes both. They provide a fixed base as well as a plunge. In other words, you take the motor out, and you can easily use it in the plunge, or you can use it in the fixed base, which is a real plus. I think it's about a horse and 3/4, or maybe a 2 horse. I have one. I don't know where it is. Don't use it very often, but there's a pretty good idea getting the best of both worlds. If I had to take my pick, I would take this one. The DeWalt, the DW621 gets my approval or my seal as this is the best all-around router. And I've used a lot of them, maybe not as many as others, and I've used every brand that you can probably name, including Craftsman from years ago. Frick, next. Remember, if you are a first responder, tonight's giveaway is just for you. If you're a fireman, if you're EMT, if you are a police officer, please register for our draw. It's free. We're going to give away a bunch of prizes at the end of the night. If you want to support, if you want to be part of the Purple Heart Project and help finance some of this.
Stand behind your bench.
Why?
It's designed to get you.
Oh,
right
The
there
focus
on your
is,
bench.
yeah.
Okay. If you would like to participate and help with us bringing in these combat wounded vets, make a donation. We're happy to receive it. And you'll see the blessings. We will broadcast during our next Purple Heart Project. We'll do the same thing we did last time. Had lots of very positive comments about that, and that'll give you a chance to actually be in the room with these guys. And tonight, at every $1,000 increment, we're going to give away another dovetail saw to one of these first responders. Big shout out to Santa Claus and his wife and the support that they give us. I don't tell you all about it. They don't want it, but they need to know how much we appreciate their support. And Santa Claus knows all about combat wounded vets, and his heart is in the right place, and he proves it to us every time we do this. So thank you to you guys. Salute. Frick?
Brandon Zane in Connecticut wants to know.
Brandon?
Yep.
Hey, Brandon.
Have you tried Festool routers, and if not, why? Or if so, what is your opinion on their
You know what? I haven't. I hear people talk about them. It's almost a cult following. People get into Festool, and there's no other brand alive after that. I've used the Festool chop saw. Don't like it at all. I find it extremely awkward to try to reach up over top and get that safety switch. Don't like that. I've used the Festool cordless drills, and they're fine. I like the Bosch. I have not used the router. I know it's quite expensive. I know it's really good quality, but is it better than the DeWalt 621? Can't say because I haven't used it, but really there isn't much about that except for that lousy switch that I don't like. So if they made a 621 comparable router that didn't have that lousy switch, I'd say go for it. Next, Frick.
I'm running out of questions here.
Are you?
Well, a lot of them are the same. Like a lot of people asking, for their first router, what horsepower should they get? What horsepower is needed for cutting?
What horsepower should they get? Okay, we've answered most of them. So let me take a break and change subject. Let's.
Paul's asking if it's active first responders only, but no, it's active and retired.
Who's asking?
People in the chat.
Paul.
Oh no! If you are a first responder, retired, active. No, doesn't. We honor you for your service, and we commend you if you're still doing it. So let us give you a shout out and show you some love. All right, let's talk about this. Jake's all hot to trot about it. So there's a video that I wish I had a video that was as viral as this one recently that talked about end-grain to end-grain gluing. Now you've heard me disparage. Is that the word? Disparage end-grain gluing. And like everybody else, you were taught that it wasn't very effective. And I still think, for the most part, it's not very effective. But let's see. I did a few things, just some quick examples to see if we can actually tell the difference. So I don't think anybody's going to do this, but I took a piece of aspen, and I shot the ends, and I glued them together and clamped them for probably 2 or 3 hours. Now, I know the guy that did the video, this isn't what he was intending, but let's just see how strong it is. I also took a small piece of cherry. We're doing a picture frame for a friend, and we glued just end grain. Well, it's not really. It's kind of half and half, right? If it was end grain to end grain, it would be this glued to that. If it was long grain to long grain, it would be this glued to that. We cut on a 45, so you're getting a little bit of both, so might not be completely fair. And then I went to another extreme and I said, okay, so you're telling me that we can glue a solid wood shelf into the upright by just gluing the end grain onto the face grain. And I don't think anybody's ever going to do this. So before I break these, let's discuss this. When you have a dovetail like this, actually, let me stand on my own. So if you've heard me talk about dovetails, I never put glue on end grain with the exception of out here on the shoulders. And Alan Peters always did it, and I kind of saw his reasoning. If there was any kind of a gap, it might fill it a little bit. But the strength of this joint is not the wedge shape. It's the fact that you're gluing this end grain, this long grain to this long grain wherever a pin and a tail meet. Okay? So I'm going to set this down on this slippery tile floor, and I'm going to stress this. Ow. Yow.
You just hit that blade?
Yes, I ran my finger by that blade. I've put on a little bit of weight.
200 plus.
Not 200. I'm going to stand on this and see if it'll take my weight. Okay. So with this apron, because I got a lot of stuff in my pockets, that's probably 200 pounds. What are you laughing at? That didn't fail. So would you ever expect to put that kind of pressure on the corner of a drawer? Probably not. Now I can break this, and let's break it and see. Okay, come in close. So what failed? Well, the glue joint didn't fail, so we know the glue joint is stronger than the wood. So what happened is the wood literally pulled apart. You can see the pieces that are left. If we had glued the bottom of the socket to there, would it have made much of a difference? Probably not. The wood was bound to fail. It was the weak spot. If I were to want to include the end grain as a new gluing surface, that would require that when I cut the bottom of my sockets, that I keep them perfectly flat. When I cut the sockets when I cut in between the tails, that would have to remain perfectly flat. That's a lot of extra work. Is it worth it? Not in my book, it isn't. You think of a mortise and tenon joint. On a mortise and tenon joint, do you go in and do you clean the bottom of the socket or of the tenon so that the end grain, pardon me, do you clean the bottom of the mortise so that the end grain of the tenon touches that and increases your glue surface? No. Why? Because if you got any benefit from it, it wouldn't be worth all the extra work.
And it would have to be the exact length.
Yeah, and it adds a whole new level of complexity to the joint, but definitely diminishing return. So it wouldn't mean a hill of beans the difference to me in a dovetail. It wouldn't mean a hill of beans the difference to me in a mortise and tenon.
Unless you did the shoulder of the tenon.
Yeah, but then if you do the shoulder of the tenon, now you've got glue squeeze out all the way around it, and you got to go in and deal with that. Now, where it might make a difference, if you're usually in an application like this, we would be putting this into a dado. So if there's any value in glue surface, you've got the sides of the dado are end grain, and they're going to be gluing against the long grain sides of the shelf, and the end grain of the shelf is going to be gluing into the long grain at the bottom of the dado. That would make for a better joint. So in that application, and I already do that, but I never rely on that as the sole way of holding it together. So I'm going to put this in. And this one's almost a bit foolish because this is not something that you would ever do. So that's been sitting in there now for probably 5 hours. See how much strength it has. Wow.
More than you thought.
More than I thought. I thought it could have broken. No, there it broke. Now, here's something surprising. Look what broke. Well,
Half and half?
actually, no, Jake, look. It tore the grain, it pulled the grain away almost completely up to here, and this last little bit, it tore some grain. So I would say 2/3 of that joint failed because the wood fiber pulled apart. That's impressive. Would that be sufficient? No, because in this case, it's not so much the glue joint isn't strong enough, nor the end grain, but just gluing against that. So in a shelf application like this, you always want the shear strength that comes from having a dado.
So you broke it by pulling it away.
Yeah.
What would its shear strength have been, though?
Well, that was shear strength.
Well, no.
But you mean if I was in closer
if you
to
were
there?
in close and it was going down, because the fibers wouldn't have pulled out like that.
They wouldn't have. It would have been a lot stronger if we had just put load here and see what would it take for it to fall. And in fact, if that was glued between two pieces, how much would it take before it went? Quite a bit. But I'll tell you what this just did for me. I've always felt that anytime you put this piece into a dado, you needed to reinforce it. And I'm thinking now that maybe we don't need to. Maybe we could just, if that's a good fit, even though you really don't have any long grain to long grain fit, when you put that in, when you cut your dado and you put the shelf in there, you've got long grain touching end grain, you've got end grain touching long grain, and you've got end grain touching long grain here. So you don't have any long grain to long grain glue contact. But I'd be willing to bet that that will hold together. Interesting. That was a wow. Now this one, 2 pieces. How much effort does it take to break that? Come here, Ken, you do it. You be surprised this time.
Better stand behind him so he doesn't go flying.
So wait a minute, let's talk about this just before you do it. So this is two pieces of aspen. I shot the end, so you got a nice clean joint. It's 2 5/8, 2 5/8 by just under 3/4.
And I'm only 195.
And there's quite a bit of leverage because there's the joint, and he's pushing up here a foot away. So, are you? So what would you say? Surprise you?
I'm amazed, yeah. Crazy.
Now, that did not pull wood from either one. That was just, so what we did is we broke the glue bond. Now, that was pretty strong.
Amazing, yeah. Pop when it broke.
I'm not gonna build a house and make 2 2x4s, one long one by doing that, but that was impressive. So here's maybe a better application. A small picture frame like this is all you need, just a glue joint, just a long grain to long grain glue joint. So how much effort would be applied, or how much force would ever be applied to something like this? I'll see what it takes to break it. That actually let go a lot easier than I thought. And maybe because that's only half end grain.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow.
I've seen you break easier than that.
Wow. We might have to go back and rewrite a whole lot of woodworking books.
So, so the thing that people are frequently telling us is that in the video, the claim is that, like Ken said, that breaking the end grain bond was harder to break than the long grain to long grain bond, but it's because breaking across the fibers, it's easier to break a board across its width than over its length.
Right.
So we'll just explain that why. But when it breaks across its width, it never breaks at the glue joint. But across its length, it always breaks at the glue joint. But people mistakenly think that as a result, that means gluing end grain to end grain is actually stronger than gluing long grain to long grain.
Right. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you said. We had this conversation the other day, and I'm trying to come up with a way of explaining that. That was a surprising result right there. And what you broke, you didn't break any wood. You simply broke the glue itself. So there was glue between these two, and you literally broke that glue. And it was actually extremely strong. I can't put into words exactly what Jake's explaining. So I'm just going to summarize by this. Am I going to do anything any different? Yes. When I now build... Now, here's something I should add. I would not expect an end grain joint to work in a cross grain application. So this piece is moving this way, this piece isn't. I wouldn't expect that to hold up. That could very easily let go as this expands. But from now on, when I put a board into a dado, as long as I have good contact, I am convinced that is all you need. We used to go in, and sometimes we would put dowels in there, a whole bunch of them. Sometimes we would toenail from underneath. But I think that may be plenty strong enough. And I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to test it. We should make this the topic of our next. Go in and find some practical applications as to where might this change the way we build furniture. And I'll be a little more prepared for it. We just did this afternoon.
So to add on to that, Dave in the chat wants to know how much difference the different glues would make.
Well, Dave, we'll play around with that and see what we can come up with. Next one, Frick.
Okay, Luther sent me one here.
We've only got 10 minutes.
I know, we got questions.
So a question we've been getting a lot of in the chat is, what do you think about router lifts in a router table?
I've never had one. I've used them in woodcraft stores. and they're pretty nice. Not have to, and I'll probably appreciate it when I get older, a lot older. So what he's talking about is there'd be a crank up here.
Just so you know, Jake, your camera's off. So they can't see you right now.
Okay, can't see me?
Just give it a second.
Okay. We're having technical difficulties. So a router lift just means in a router table application, you access the raising and the lowering of the router from the top side instead of having to get down underneath. And I got a torn meniscus in my knee, so getting down there and doing that is a real pain. So that would be nice, and maybe someday I'll invest in one because they certainly look good. So if I was going out and buying one today, or if I was going to go out and make a new router table today, I might actually incorporate that. I do like them. I can't recommend the brand to you because I haven't bought one myself, but I may. Next, Frick. Remember, if you are a first responder, whether you're retired or active, you're the only ones that we're giving gifts away to tonight, so just register on there. We're going to give away some Purple Heart t-shirts. We're going to give away 3 Dead Cat sweaters or PHP golf shirts, your choice. And for every $1,000 increment in donations we receive tonight, we're going to give away a dovetail saw. Don't forget your Shawn Shim, comes in a nice little bag, by the way, and your Adjustar. It'll fit Stanley, Record, Luban, Wood River, and Lee Nielsen. George was in this class. Yeah, George was in when we taught over in the other shop. I remember George well.
Give me a second. Now we're frozen completely.
So we don't have any questions, you mean? Or
They can hear you. Just
oh, we don't have any video?
But you are frozen.
Well, here, can I go in here and read and see if there's anything that's coming up?
Sure.
Don't buy the saw stop router lift. Huge disappointment. Okay, Jack, thank you. I think there's a couple of key issues. First, how much strength is really needed? Picture frame doesn't need as much as bookshelves. Well, that's a good point. However, this is a pretty easy, if you're just doing a flat miter, it's pretty easy to strengthen. In fact, we're working on a picture frame right now, wherever it is, somewhere. And after gluing it together, we cut a spline in there. But since your picture frame is usually what's holding up your picture, I wouldn't want that joint failing and that thing falling on the ground. So for the little bit of time it takes to strengthen that joint, I would do it. And the problem you run into with a flat miter too is as the wood shrinks, it often pulls apart the joint on the inside or on the outside. So I always like to throw in some kind of reinforcement on a miter joint. But the one that I'm going to change the most is putting a shelf into a dado. That one, I can't wait to go and actually try it and see how strong it is. And we'll actually do some work. We'll compare it to one that's reinforced with dowels and toenails and see what happens. We back up and running, Frick?
Yeah.
What's the next question?
I'm just looking for one.
We've got 5 minutes left.
What is that, 4 questions?
Wait, Frick, what time is it?
It's 8:52.
Okay, that clock's way up.
Yeah, come on, quit trying to get out early, Jake.
All right.
Where's the super goat? They ride Jake a little bit.
It's not here. Okay, Frick, can you ask about doing the manual cutting version that you would use wood hinge core box bits? That comes from Bosch Colt.
Say it again, please.
He's asking about doing the manual cutting version that you would use wood hinge core box bits.
He's talking about manually cutting the core box portion on a wood hinge box.
No, I can't because I haven't done it yet. I'm going to try at some point, but I have not done it yet, so I can't comment on it. Sorry.
Gary Burnett wants to know what kind.
Hey, Gary.
What kind of
Gary's one of our combat wounded vets.
What kind of glue do you use to glue leather to wood?
I just use Tight Bond. Tight Bond 3 because that's what I use on everything, and it works fine. Now it'll suck in the glue, so you might have to put a little extra on there. I don't think I've ever bothered to size it, but just put on plenty of glue and just be aware that it pulls the glue in pretty fast, so use plenty.
Just so you know, we're at $2,400 in donations, so
Okay,
we can do one last push to get it up to 3 maybe, so we give away 3
yeah.
prizes.
Remember, if you are a first responder, as a salute to you and the service that you give to your community, we are reserving our giveaways tonight just for you folks.
Active or retired.
Active or retired. And also big shout out to Luther, and out in Washington, Luther does a tremendous amount. Luther and Super Goat, aka Super Dave, are the reason why our Purple Heart project works as well as it does. They do a tremendous amount. Luther and Jake work the website. Luther works me over all the time. He and Frick are buds.
We run the show. We run the show.
What? Yeah, they run the show. So if you like our YouTube videos, Luther writes all the scripts. I'm just the pretty face that does it. And then between Luther and Frick, they do all the heavy editing, which I usually give them a lot. And then it comes up, and hopefully you learn something from it.
All right, last question. Brian Prophet.
So if you haven't subscribed and hit that notification bell and liked and all the rest of that stuff you do it, please. Go ahead, Frick.
All right, last question comes from Brian Proffer.
Hey, Brian.
It says router or table saw for dados and rabbits. Which do you prefer?
Oh, table saw. Anytime you're cutting a router, you want to cut a 1/2 inch router, a 3/4 inch router, and using a 3/4 inch bit. Just the way that's cutting on both sides, I just don't like it. I much prefer to do it on a table saw. The problem with the table saw is you can't come right up to an edge and stop because of the shape of the blade. So there's that disadvantage. But you know what? I like the speed and the control you have on the table saw. Run them through, stop where you need to, and finish it with a hand router plane, and it seems to work great. Never really liked cutting dados with a straight bit. I just find that it's throwing dust all over the place, a lot of vibration, somewhat hard to control. I know you can take measures to limit that, but still, I think a table saw is better. Good sharp dado blade. Is that it, Frick? No really good ones left?
Yeah, that's it. I'm just putting together the draw names. So
Okay,
if you wanna
any more
wrap-
vets to say?
We should mention, a lot of people put their names in the draw before they read the first responder
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And Frick can't get their names off, or can't get them all off.
No, I got a few off, but I have over.
Oh, people have asked to have their name taken off?
Yeah, so if their name is drawn and it hasn't been taken off, tell them to tell us know.
Yeah, I have 225 names here, and I doubt, which is 1/3 of our audience. I doubt 1/3 of our audience is first responders. But if you do get picked and you are not a first responder, if you can please just let us know immediately, and then that way we can either draw again or donate it to one of the
Right.
first responders.
Ken, did I cover all of our stuff that we wanted to cover? So on October 11th, everything goes well. Luther's coming up to it. In fact, he's bringing a friend of his from Southern California. And who else is coming? Is Jack coming? Mm-hmm. Jack is coming. Oh, good. Jack's coming. Yeah. Oh, yes, right. Jack's coming. So Jack Lane is coming up. And what I was thinking is I wanted Jim from the Moncton chapter of the Bench Brigade, but Jim didn't get permission from his boss. But he will be down to say hello. And Jim's going to take a class in the spring. All right, draw time? Almost. Okay. Any other shout-outs?
Frick, can you switch before the draw?
Frick, Jake, you dropped something. Is that off of your...
Yeah, it's fine.
Hey, remember, if you aren't lucky enough, if you're not a first responder, then you're not getting a dead cat sweater tonight. But you can get your own.
Okay,
If
can
you go to
get-
patssecretgarden.com, that's Moose's business. He and Jake built that website. You can go on there and you can order your sounds weird. You can order your own dead cat. You can order your own dead cat. Never have to feed it. And as we get towards the fall season, I'll say this again. It is the lightest, warmest garment you'll ever wear. I tested it. Minus 15 Celsius, and that's all. Well, that's the only thing I wear up above. Just wonder. I would come home sometimes, and my wife would have pulled the, she'd have her bottom half in one of my dead cat sweaters because it was so warm and cozy. Looks kind of funny running around the house like that, but. And a big thank you, by the way, to all the people that helped us in our PHP back in September. We had tons of people volunteering. Teresa comes to mind. It went extremely well. We're grateful. We're tweaking it a little bit. And sometime soon I'm going to show you what Kevin has done as far as the artwork for that wall. This is the Joe Power Memorial Workshop, and that whole front wall is going to have 7 large 4x8 murals of Joe's military service. He enlisted underage at age 16 in 1939 with the SD&G Highlanders, and was in the right through until March 10th, 1945, when a mortar came over the wall they were behind and killed his friend. He got hit in the back of the head, woke up 3 months later in a hospital in England, and was left paralyzed on his right side the rest of his life. I grew up as his neighbor. His son Murray was a good friend of mine. And Joe was my hero, just a super guy. So we're dedicating this building to him. And those 7 panels will have, each one of those will represent some aspect of his military career. First one is going to be his enlistment picture. The last one is going to be when he was in Holland, commemorating the 40th anniversary of the liberation of Holland. And the others will have various things. Luther's working on a documentary for it that will knock your socks off. Luther's, just like he did for Herman DeMeo, back in October of last year. If you never saw that, you should go see it. We're going to have something very similar for Joe Power. And what's so good is it's going to provide information that his family never knew, so they'll know a little bit more about their dad and the sacrifice he made. Are we ready?
Yeah, Luther wanted everyone to know that Jack, Luther, and Eric are all coming up in the same car, so that sounds like a party.
They're driving?
No. They're flying into Boston.
Oh,
and then
right,
driving north
yes.
to Boston.
Right. Yeah, wouldn't want to be a fly on that wall.
All right, we're ready.
It's all right. Luther just sleeps. He never talks. But he does like to drive when he's sleeping.
All right, so again, if you're not a first responder, just let us know, and we can redraw. I don't know if we made 3,000. But anyway. All right, let's go.
We'll do it anyway. Give away 3 saws.
So what are we giving away first? Dead
First
cat?
responders. Let's give away 3 dead cats.
Jake, if you can watch the chat.
No, let's give away a dead cat and then a Purple Heart shirt, a dead cat, Purple Heart shirt, dead cat, Purple Heart shirt.
What about a frickin' good barbecue shirt?
And we'll throw in 3 of those. Let's
one.
get his...
I'm almost out of stock, so only 1.
No, do 3.
I don't have 3 to give away.
You mean we've been selling those things?
Heck yes, we have.
Really?
Well, all the money goes towards the Purple Heart Project. So
We never even mentioned it.
if you're going to
Tonight
make a
we forgot.
donation, you may as well grab a shirt. So at the same time. Anyway, all right, we ready?
Yeah.
First winner, Dead Cat, goes to Sean Titmus in Bradenton, Florida, United
Hey,
States.
Sean. I know where Bradenton is. Thank you for your service. Enjoy the dead cat. I hope it gets cold enough there at some point to actually... Well, you have the option of the golf shirt. Just tell us your size.
Okay, winner number 2.
Is Purple Heart T-shirt. They can choose the color or the size.
Chris Yoakum, who is a Detroit City police officer, Plymouth, Michigan.
Chris, Detroit.
Police
Wow,
officer.
brother. Thank you for your service. We salute you.
Okay, up next,
Dead cat.
Dead Cat is going to Pierre Granier in San Francisco.
Pierre. San Francisco gets cold and foggy. You'll love that dead cat.
Next winner is...
Thank you.
Next winner is Cody Moser in Pennsylvania.
Cody, thank you for your service. You're getting a Purple Heart. You can have either wood is good, wood for good, or wood doing good. Tell us your size.
Our next winner is...
Dead cat.
Sure. Paul Testoni in East Greenwich.
Does it say what he does?
No. Only
Paul?
Yep.
Paul, regardless of what you do, thank you for your service. And you're getting a dead cat, is that right? And where does he live? In Michigan?
So we have to, what's RI?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yeah.
That's cold enough for a dead cat.
Yeah, it is. So we have to redraw Shawn's.
Sean's not a first responder?
No.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that, brother. In fact, I'm going to send you a T-shirt anyway for your honesty. Make sure we send a T-shirt to Sean. So let's get another first responder. And what are we giving him? Is that a dead cat or a T-shirt?
Who knows? The winner of whatever this is David Howard Pine in Colorado.
David, thank you for your service. Colorado, you definitely need a dead cat. Hopefully that's the one it was. And we have one more Purple Heart T-shirt to give away before we do the saws.
And that is Alan Arnold in Maryland.
Alan, thank you for your service, brother. Tell us which of the Purple Heart T-shirts you'd like. They're lovely shirts, by the way. You can wear them to formal events. We do.
And if you have all of them, you can opt in for a frickin' good barbecue shirt.
Yes.
All right,
So
sauce.
now we're giving away one frickin' good barbecue.
Yes.
Comes with a smash burger.
Sure, if they're within the area. Craig Winecoats in Plymouth.
Hey, Craig, enjoy it. Now, three RobCosman saw dovetail sauce.
All right. First winner is Pat Pierce, West Virginia.
Hey, Pat, thank you for your service. Enjoy your saw. You'll love it.
Next winner is
I guess I don't have to yell.
Kent Yarnell in Los Angeles, California.
Kent, thank you for your service. Enjoy the saw. It'll be on its way Monday, as long as you get us your address, and you will love it.
And last but not least, Kevin Campbell. Doesn't say where, but he's from the U.S.
Kevin, thank you. Saw is coming to you. Let us know your address. Those of you who got saws, don't forget, at some point you're going to want to get a dovetail marking knife and the Shawn Shim. Big thank you to Shawn. His idea was absolutely fantastic, and there's a whack of people who are cutting better dovetails because of him. The Shawn Shim. That's it for tonight.
That is all.
Thank you to everyone. Jake behind the camera. Frick over there behind that green blob. Moose for being here and supporting us in that special presentation tonight. Ken for helping us out. Rex is in the back corner. What do you do?
Security.
Yeah. Get Irvin on the camera. You got him? Oh, you're up there. You're on that camera.
No. Sorry.
That red light's on.
Yeah, because
So over here is, I call him Urban Cowboy. So he's Frick's lifelong friend. He just moved home from Toronto. Enough of the big cities, coming back to New Brunswick, and he's going to be doing some work in here, helping out with the camera work. So thank you, Irv.
Going through training.
Okay, folks, remember, be nice to everybody. And let's not forget what happened 20 years ago. When I say let's not forget, some tragedies, unfortunately, or I'd say the only good thing about tragedies is they pull us together as a nation and as a people. And you know what? Everything Moose said, I echo. And it was extremely well said. So we love you. We do this because we love you. We love our combat wounded vets, and can't wait to get the next class in here. Awesome bunch. Have a great 2 weeks. We will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good night.